So we're here with Martha Rosler, artist, photographer, woman. First of all, I want to thank you for having accepted the invitation of the Lisbon Consortium this year.
I'm delighted to be here.
It's very inspirational to have you amongst us, and especially because your work is extremely resonant to those who, working in culture and in the arts, are worried about the conditions of the present. You have always worked in a very tight, timely connection to the several contexts and the times that you have gone through. And I was wondering whether you could start by telling us why you think it is hard, or not hard, probably, to be a timely artist in our day and age. What are the conditions that artists are facing nowadays that were, let's say, different than in the 70s or in the 60s?
Well, that's an interesting way of talking about it. The art world, by which I would at this moment focus particularly on the non-artists in it, prefer art that doesn't direct their attention to the now. Mostly because in many ways people prefer to see art as something that helps them move away from the concerns of the everyday, and many people, particularly those who are engaged in showing or buying work, are interested in something that makes them feel they don't really have to worry about the conduct of daily events. So they would like an art that is inspirational without actually engaging them in considering what is the actual conduct of life, rather some other bubble or beautiful vision, all of which is great, but not what I'm interested in actually. I believe that art actually now has the obligation to speak to people about the conditions of everyday life, not necessarily to make them feel that it's insuperable, but quite the opposite, to remind them that they are engaged as citizens. So it's difficult for an artist to know how to get there while still getting the work shown. For me, in the 70s, it didn't matter whether my work was shown because there were so many other ways to distribute or exhibit work without the usual institutional gatekeepers, and I didn't care about market values. Now artists are trained to think that market values are primarily that which every artist should seek. So to put it more simply, artists are interested in being successful in the world that's driven by gallerists and other purchasers. A very large percentage of financial support is finances. Is invested in the art market now, far more than in the 70s, for example, or even the 90s. So there's an avid market for art, and artists would like to be successful in that realm. On the other hand, there is a tolerance for a certain degree of what's called political expression, or, to put it in a more benign way, social practice today. It's given its own little category, but it is grudgingly accepted in some respects. The problem is when people perceive social practice as actually being political, that is actually addressing questions of power in everyday life, then all of a sudden it's not so acceptable. Personally, it's hard for me really to grab hold of this question, in that I didn't care then and I don't care now. And I think my willingness to always walk away from conditions that are at base unacceptable makes me a little stronger in relation to those forces. I don't care. It's not that I don't want my work to be seen, shown, appreciated, talked about, or bought. It's that fundamentally I really have to do what I have to do.
Right. Many people in visual culture have been, over the past 2 decades, speaking about a change in cultural paradigm in this visual turn, pictorial turn, about the visual construction of the social, how visuality, in fact, impacts the way we not only perceive our body but act in our world. And I was wondering whether you feel that your work, which is so engaging and political in the sense that it addresses the real conditions that we are facing in these trying times, how do you want your work to impact on visually, not only visually, but also socially, on the way we, not only the people who buy your work, who admire your work, who write on your work, how they reconceptualize the way they feel as citizens, as engaged citizens. Do you want to?
Well, from the perspective of the way that the visual impacts upon and affects our self-understanding, I think, speaking particularly as a woman, it would be wonderful if my work plays a role in that conversation about the visualization of identity and personhood and even other questions of national identification. On the other hand, I would say that I'm very interested in the non-visual, in the auditory, for example, and the merely conceptual, because I think that most people conjure up pictures of what the work evokes based on the richness of our visual culture. In other words, one can intervene in visual culture by means other than the visual, discursively, for example, or using other senses. I think it's problematic as a visual artist for me to be stuck always in the visual. So yes, I think that art of necessity intervenes in the flow of representations of ourselves and others. This is critical, but not necessarily always by visual means.
Could you tell me how the second series of Bringing the War Home will have later closer look at 2 of your pieces, one from the earlier series and the second one from the 2004-2008 series, how that has engaged the conversation on against the war in Iraq and against current U.S. intervention in the Middle East?
Well, you're asking my relation with the images?
How your work was received by the art world as continuing that conversation, that political conversation that was taking place outside the scope of the art world against Iraq. Did you feel that let's say that it truly impacted the way in which artists, that it inspired other artists as well to continue and to find ways of engaging visually with the work, with what was going on in Iraq? You mentioned that you founded a coalition of artists against the war. You were engaged, of that coalition. How does that work tie in with activism?
Well, first I would say about Artists Against the War that I was one of a small group of people who turned out to be 95% women, by the way, that decided as artists we had to make public interventions in the discourse. And I was one of the least active producers in that group because I was really busy. And as a result, although I wholeheartedly engaged in the activities that we developed, I felt I needed to also make something that was mine. I felt impelled to do so. I was invited to be in a show called Election, which took place just before the second election of George Bush Jr. And I decided then that the thing that I felt most impelled to do in that context was to make more montages. Whereas the works that we did with Artists Against the War were in many ways performative and took place in public arenas, I felt I needed to go back to a kind of an agitprop image that could be anywhere. So for me, I felt almost the sense of relaxation. Yes, this is what I do. I put images together, even though, in fact, I do many other things, including performance and installation. I felt this is what I need to do. And the reason is because here we are in 2004. Looking ahead, I see we are going to be exactly in the same quagmire. We are reproducing the same arguments, the same nonsensical lies and justifications. This cannot end well for the Iraqi people, for the Afghan people, or for the Americans. And looking back from 2014, I think it was easy to see this. I did see it, many people saw it, and I felt I needed to return to another era, another conversation that was so formative for people of my generation. We've spent the intervening decades trying to get away from it, and for the national government and its military to end what they called the Vietnam Syndrome, which is that we don't belong in other countries fighting wars over really oil or other commodities. So how it intervened, one of the things, I don't often think about the reception of my work, but I was very struck by the fact that just what I thought that certain critics would say they said, which was, well, maybe this made sense then, and yes, those works, yes, but these, they have no meaning, when in fact, of course, they're identical, absolutely identical.
Two very brief questions to end for now this conversation. Do you think there were ever any missed chances in your past projects, that there were things that you wanted to do that you left out and that you feel you should have?
I have two answers. One is never look back, never regret, and the other is always look back, always find what you left out. There are many things that I wish I had done, and there are bodies of work, primarily video footage, that are going into their third decade that I still have to work on. So yes, I think every artist sees the flaws in what they've done, but you have to slap yourself on the wrist and say, go forward, don't go backward.
Is there a special art form or technique that you haven't tried so far that you'd like to engage in? You've done everything, you said. Performance, installation, writing, visuals. Any specific technique that you would still like to video first?
Yeah, no.
No. Okay, good. Martha, thank you very much. We're going to continue our talk later on, and I hope this will be the first of many visits to the
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me.